Jacob had many sons, but the one named Joseph was the one he loved more than his other sons, because he was born when Jacob was old. Jacob gave Joseph a special coat which was sewn from many different colors of cloth. God showed Joseph a dream that told how someday Joseph would be the ruler over his parents and brothers. This made his brothers very jealous, and they hated Joseph very much. One day Joseph went to the place where his brothers were taking care of the sheep and goats. When his brothers saw him, they decided to kill him. One brother, named Reuben, said, "Let us throw him into this deep pit." Reuben said this because he wanted to rescue Joseph later. So they tore the coat from his body and threw Joseph into the pit. Then they saw a group of merchants on their way to Egypt to sell goods. So the brothers sold Joseph to the merchants for 20 pieces of silver. After that they took the coat home to Jacob, and he wept and was very sad because he thought a wild animal had killed Joseph. The merchants took Joseph to Egypt, and one of the king's soldiers named Potiphar bought Joseph as a slave. While Joseph was in Egypt, he was put into prison for something he did not do. While he was still in prison, the king of Egypt, who was called the Pharaoh, had a dream. Someone remembered that Joseph could tell the meaning of dreams. So Pharaoh summoned Joseph. With God's help, Joseph told the meaning of the dream. There would be 7 years of good harvest and 7 years of famine. Pharaoh was so happy that Joseph was able to tell the meaning of the dream that the Pharaoh made Joseph governor over all of Egypt. After 7 years, there was a famine in Egypt. There was also a famine in Canaan, where Jacob and his sons lived. But there was still grain in Egypt because Joseph had stored grain during the 7 years of good harvest. Jacob heard that there was grain in Egypt, so he sent 10 of his sons to get grain. When Joseph's brothers arrived in Egypt, Joseph recognized them, but they did not recognize Joseph. They came to Joseph and bowed down before him, because Joseph was the governor of Egypt. On their second visit, Joseph revealed himself to his brothers. They were very afraid Joseph would punish them for selling him into slavery long ago. But Joseph forgave them. He told them to bring their father Jacob and all the Israelites to live in Egypt. When the brothers returned to Canaan, they told their father Jacob about Joseph and the invitation to Egypt. Jacob and his descendants packed up and left for Egypt. There were 75 Israelite people in all. It happened just like God had told Abraham a long time ago. He told Abraham that his great-grandchildren would go to another land and be slaves there 400 years. On their way to Egypt, God told Jacob that he should not fear going to Egypt because God would someday bring his descendants back to the promised land of Canaan. When Jacob and his family arrived in Egypt, Pharaoh was very kind to Joseph's father, Jacob. Pharaoh gave the Israelites some of the best land in Egypt. After many years, Jacob died in Egypt.